Hey, everyone. Welcome. It's good to see you all. All right. Give everybody a couple of minutes to get here. I hope you all had a wonderful summer. Anybody do anything fun? Hey, Maria. It's great to see everybody. 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we have 8 students in this class. 5 are here. So we'll give it just a second. Yes, it's fine. It is fine. I'll talk about cameras on and off as in just a second. All right. So we will go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for being on time. I do start class right on time. I will start it right on the hour. And usually for the first minute or two, we take questions. There probably aren't any questions yet, but if you do have any, now's a good time to ask. If not, let's go ahead and begin. Let me see here the chat. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you. There we go. All right, so I just want to make sure I know how to pronounce everybody's name. So we have Charlotte, Luke, Asia, Maria, and is it Abigail? Is that the correct pronunciation? I know you said not
Yes.
Abby. Abigail?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect. I want to always make sure that I pronounce names correctly. So can everybody see where it says, welcome to biology? You see that screen? Perfect, excellent. All right. So welcome to biology. We are going to be studying about living things and how they function in our class this year. We will cover a lot of topics. Biology is a pretty huge field, covering everything from how animals are classified, how organisms are classified, the different animal groups, behavior of animals, life cycles of animals, and it'll take us the whole year to get through all that. Before we start talking about biology, I want to cover a few things that are really important in my course that might be a little bit different than some of your other courses that you're taking. So bear with me if you have had me before. A lot of this will be repeat for you. One of the most important things, if you are a new student to Canvas, if you're either new to AIM Academy or you haven't used Canvas before, there is a tutorial, a video tutorial that I put in the classroom resources. So on our homepage right here, there's this classroom resources section. If you click on that, it'll open a page that looks like this. One of those is how to navigate in Canvas. That's a video that will show you what you need to know in order to use Canvas in an efficient way. So please make sure that you do watch that. And you'll notice there's other resources there as well. I will add to those as the year goes on if there's anything that is important. So just make sure that you look that all over. All right, so using your webcam. So it's important that you start every course with your webcam on. So that is an AIM Academy policy, not my policy. It is required so that you are who you say you are. It's a safety issue for AIM Academy. So please make sure that you do that. There's a couple other reasons though that you want to leave your webcam on. First, you get to know each other in a much better way if you have your cameras on, and I get to know you. So there may come a day where you want a recommendation for a class that you want to take or a college that you want to go to. When that happens, if I know you, it's easy for me to write that recommendation. If I've never seen your face because you leave your camera off all the time and you don't ever participate, then it makes it hard for me to be able to write a reference for you. So please come to class, please leave your cameras on, and please make sure that you participate. Now, I know that's not always possible, and that's fine. I'll work with you. I don't take off points for not coming to class or for not participating in class, but I think it's an important thing to be able to do. All right. So let me see here. I want to talk just a second about AI because this is really revolutionizing education. Almost every website that you see these days has some kind of AI component built in. So when I say AI, what I mean is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence can be thought of as an expert friend who's sitting right beside you as you're doing your work. That friend can help you to understand things that you don't understand, but you don't want to have that friend give you answers because then you're not learning. You know, I could sit here and I could say to my device, my Google device, I could say, hey, what makes something alive? And it could give me the answer, but I'm not thinking myself, I'm not learning myself. So I want you to learn how to use AI in a way that helps you learn without being something that makes you that without being cheating, without being plagiarism. We'll talk about how we're going to do that here. So one thing is you have to know that you have to be over the age of 13 in order to use AI at all. If you're between the ages of 13 and 18, you have to have your parents' permission. So most of you guys are going to be in that second category. Most of you will be between the ages of 13 and 18. If you get your parents' permission, AI can be a really powerful tool to help you to learn. Now, I get to know you. You're going to do some writing, and I get to know your writing style pretty quickly. Usually takes me just a couple weeks, and then I can identify when something is submitted that isn't you, that isn't your writing style. I want to avoid that. You guys are all in high school, and you're expected to work with what's called academic integrity. So I want you to learn how to think on your own. If you copy and paste something from AI or from a website, all that shows me you know how to do is copy and paste. So I want you to learn, not just get good grades, not just finish a lesson. I want you to learn in a way that makes it stick in your head. So we have a couple of resources that we have got this year to help us toward that end. Now, these are both new resources. I'm learning how to use them too. So we will kind of go through this together. There is a program called Class Companion. It's really most useful for writing assignments in like an English course or a social studies course, but it might be useful to us as well. So I'm probably going to add it to a couple lessons and we'll experiment with it. We'll see how it works. What Class Companion is, it is an AI program that you will communicate with, like AI grammar checkers. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can check your work. That's a good thing to do, to use AI to check your work. So grammar is a perfect example of that. We will talk a little bit about grammar as we move a little bit on with our course. But this Class Companion, it's embedded in Canvas. So let's say I wanted you, there's two organelles, two little things inside a cell. That one of them is called mitochondria, it makes energy, and the other is called a chloroplast, and it makes sugar. So plants have both. So suppose my question that I ask you in Class Companion is, tell me the difference between a mitochondria and a chloroplast. You can say to Class Companion, I don't know what mitochondria is. It'll then tell you what mitochondria is. And it'll say, okay, now that you know what mitochondria is, how do you think it's different than a chloroplast? You type up your answer and it'll say, that's pretty good. You're about halfway there, but you still need to talk about this or, you know, some topic. Then you put another answer in and it helps you. It's like a tutor saying a little bit more or a little bit less or a little bit different. And then you can submit your answer that way. That will be acceptable. To use Class Companion in that way is not plagiarism because it's part of the learning process. Now, like I said, this is all really new. We've only had it for a couple of weeks, so we haven't used it with students yet. So we're going to see how it goes. Another new program that we have this year to help you is called Plagiarism Check. Now, students don't always mean to plagiarize. A lot of times students don't know what's okay and what's not. Is it okay to copy and paste from a website or is it not? Basically, if you copy and paste something, if you do Control-C and Control-V, that's cheating. That's plagiarism. That's passing someone else's work off as if it's your own work. You can't do that. You'll get thrown out of college if you do that. You'll get fired from a job if you do that. So I want to help you to learn the right way to use the internet and to use AI without plagiarizing. And this plagiarism check will help with that. It is a program in Canvas. So whenever there's a written assignment that you have to do, let's say there's a test at the end of a unit and there's 10 questions on that test that you have to answer. Plagiarism check, after you answer them and you submit it, it'll give you a report that says 50% of your answers are plagiarized. 50% of them came from these websites. You then have a chance to correct that and then submit it to me. I grade the second attempt, not the first. So you'll always have 2 attempts for all of the work that you've done, all the written assignments, not the quizzes, but the written assignments. It's that second one, after plagiarism check helps you, the second one is what you submit to me for grading. All right, again, this is going to be trial and error. So I'm going to be very flexible with this. Also, if plagiarism check says you've plagiarized something, but you're telling, you say, but I didn't, that's when you contact me and you say, it tells me that I didn't, that I did, but I didn't, and we'll have a dialogue. We'll talk about it. I'm not here to catch you, to try to trick you. I want to help you learn. So together we'll work our way through this program. And I don't want to use it as a stick to punish you. I want to use it as a tool to help you to learn. I do take roll. I take attendance in our live classes, and it will count toward your grade. If you attend and participate, your grade will be bumped up at the end of the semester. I want to talk just briefly about live class behavior. This is rarely a problem. I've found that AIM Academy students are very respectful of one another and of the teacher. The biggest live class behavior issue that we have is when 1 or 2 students really monopolizes the conversation. Like they answer every question and they, are constantly talking. I want everybody to have an opportunity to talk if you want to. I don't call on anybody. I don't make you participate if you don't want to, but I want you to have the opportunity to if you'd like to. So if we have somebody monopolizing the conversation, I'll contact that student directly and I'll ask them to wait. That's really about the only problem that we have. As I said, we have a rule that you have to have your cameras on, but that's really the only live class behavior rule that we have. I want to talk about the due dates. You will notice in the lessons that there are due dates. Now, the day that we have live class today, I have live classes on Monday and Tuesday for biology. You guys are the Tuesday section. So you have things due on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's important, but they're also flexible that you follow those due dates. What that means is that I don't take off points for something submitted after the due date. You don't ever have to write to me and say, can I have more time? I give you as much time as you need. That said, I want you to try to stay with the due dates as much as you can for a couple reasons. First of all, just following, not following the due dates makes you fall behind. And that can get really frustrating. That can raise your stress level really high. I recommend working ahead. I always post assignments at least 2 weeks in advance so you can work ahead. That way, if ever anything comes up, you get sick or you go away somewhere or you have something come up with your family, you're ahead. So you're not going to fall behind and get stressed out. Probably the more important reason that I think it's good to stay with the due dates is that these live classes will be more meaningful for you if you stay current with the due dates. We will, when we're studying fish, I'll have a case study that has to do with fish. Well, if you've read the lessons about fish, it'll have a lot more meaning to you than if you haven't. And I also send progress reports to your parents throughout the year. I have nothing but due dates to use. So if you're a little bit behind, your grade is going to look like it's low, even though you might have all A's. It's going to look like you have an F if you've fallen behind the due dates. So that's a couple of important reasons for you to try to stay with the due dates. If you share a computer, make sure that you log out of Canvas at the end of each session so that others aren't, especially if you've got 2 kids in your home, 2 students in your home, or your parents, and you are sharing a computer, you want to make sure that you log out of theirs and into your own account. A lot of times at the beginning of the year, somebody will write to me and say, I don't have a submit button. I can't submit the quiz. Can't click the submit at the bottom. That's probably because you're logged into your parents' account. Just log out and log back in. Now, this is important. In my courses, all quizzes and tests are open book and open note. Not only can you are encouraged to go back and find answers to any questions that you don't know when you're taking a quiz or taking a test. And a lot of people want to know why. You know, what's the value of an open book, open note exam? Well, you guys have on your computer right now, on your phone, if you have a phone, all the facts in the universe. The day of having to memorize all the facts is gone. Outside of school, it's rare that anyone will ever ask you a question or have you solve a problem using only the knowledge that you have in your head. It's much more important that you learn how to gather information, how to find answers, how to use that information in a meaningful way. In other words, how to learn. You need to learn how to find the information that you need and then apply that to whatever situation it is that you're doing. So I have open book, open note. You can go back always. There's no reason that you can't go back and look up answers that you're not sure about. Now, that does not mean that my quizzes and tests are easy. They're not. I don't have a lot of factual questions. They're going to be more critical thinking, more problem solving kind of questions. You guys are in high school now. You need to learn how to put together various bits of information in order to come up with an answer to a question. Now, I ease you in. At the beginning of the year, there will be more fact-based questions. There will be more just straight answers. We'll gradually transition into more critical thinking as we get to the end. And, you know, this is the reality here is we're online. If I said to you, you can't use your book, I'm not sitting there watching you. You're tempted to cheat. If you have the book right there, I eliminate that temptation. Not only can you should go back to the book and find the answer. Studies have shown that it takes somewhere between 5 and 7 times of being introduced to a new topic before you understand what it is. So if you've never heard the word mitochondria before, you have to be introduced to that word mitochondria between 5 and 7 times before it stays in your memory. Going back to the book, going back to your notes to find the answer to that is one more way. And then when you go back and you write it down again, that's another way. So the more times you encounter something, the more likely you are to remember that something. Hold on, I have a question here. Yep, you're welcome. All right, as I said, we do have 2 sections of biology. So the reason we do that is we want to keep our class sizes small enough to be really beneficial. The only difference between the Monday section and the Tuesday section are the day and time of the live class. The live classes themselves are identical. So if you ever have to miss Tuesday, you know for sure that you're not going to be around on Tuesday, you can come to the Monday class. I think for the most part, it's best for you to stay with this day and time because you get to know each other better when you stay in the same class. But you can switch back and forth if you need to, if ever there's a need for that to happen. All right, let me see here. We use a couple of games in this class sometimes, especially at the end of class. We'll use Kahoot. Has anybody here used Kahoot before? To almost everybody. When we get to Kahoot, we might do one at the end of this class. Usually I have Kahoots at the end so that if we have extra time, we can review, but not always. So it's basically a quiz format game where you compete against each other for points. I think it's sometimes fun to do. Another game format that I use is called Jetpunk. It's a trivia game. And we can, you know, the way we'll play this is it'll be a little format like a chart, and you guys will holler out the answers and I'll type them in. So we will use those sometimes. I did tell you guys, if you have any pets, you could bring them. Anybody bring a pet that they want to show? Anybody have an unusual pet? Oh, you played it in 2nd grade. You have a bearded dragon, Luke? That's cool. That's cool. Bearded dragons are very nice pets. My daughter has a gecko, and they're just really fun pets. I'll Oh, my little one's sleeping here, but I'll wake her up. She sleeps in a bed right here. She'll sometimes climb up on my lap during class, but this is Maya. Maya is a Coton de Tuliar. She's a kind of a dog breed from Madagascar, and she's very, very snuggly. She would like to be right here during class. So I put her right there. So if you do have any unusual pets that you ever want to talk about, just let me know. Yeah, cat's asleep. All right, let's jump right now into talking about the scientific method. So hopefully this is not new to you. Hopefully you have encountered the scientific method before. Doesn't matter if you haven't, we're going to cover it a lot this year. It is at the core of biology, at the core of most sciences. Basically, the scientific method is a problem-solving approach to the scientific method. Okay, one other thing I wanted to point out is that you will, in my class, you will never be tested on something that is only covered in our live classes. If you want to take notes during our live classes, you can. You're not required to, because like you're going to be tested on the scientific method, but it's also in the book. There'll be some reading in the book about it. You probably have already done it. So nothing that is only here will end up showing up on a quiz or a test. All right, so the scientific method. Scientific method is a way of solving a problem. It's a step-by-step approach, and it's used in all the sciences: biology, chemistry, physics, geology, psychology. Now, all those scientists in those different fields are going to use different questions, and they're going to use different experiments to do that, but they're going to use that same core approach called the scientific method. And there's a couple of steps of the scientific method. So this one shows observation, question, hypothesis, experiment, conclusion, and results. This one here says make an observation, question, hypothesis. Some of them will put in here between question and hypothesis, do some research. Test your prediction is the experiment. Analyze your results is going to be like right in this area here. Basically, it is a way of thinking about science, about thinking about what we do. So we will cover this repeatedly throughout the year. When you write your lab reports, which you'll do at least 2, you do 1 each semester lab report. Don't let it stress you out. I walk you through how to do the scientific method, how to do a lab report, so you don't have to be worried about it when the time comes. But I want to go into some detail about these topics and bring in a scenario that kind of makes it a little bit more real, I think. So let's, the first step, let's look at the first step of the scientific method. It is observation. Now, an observation is something that you notice using your senses that makes you wonder. You observe something. So let's say that you made some cookies, you baked some chocolate chip cookies and put them on a plate in the kitchen, and you left, and when you came back, you observed that that plate full of chocolate chip cookies is now empty. There's some crumbs on the counter, but it's empty. That's your observation. You see with your eyes that the plate full of cookies is now gone. So then the second step in the scientific method here is going to be to ask a question. I wonder who ate the cookies. Who ate the cookies? That could be my question. I could come up with a hypothesis. Well, if I think my brother ate the cookies, my hypothesis could be, and a way to test this could be, if I make more cookies, then my brother will eat them too. Then I run my experiment, I make more cookies, and then I draw a conclusion. Yes, that's fine. I draw a conclusion. So using observation gives us a starting point, something that we observe. So let's use a real life scenario right here. So about 3 years ago, the country of China put a ban on online gaming for anyone under the age of 18. So they're not allowed to play any online games on weekdays at all, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, under the age of 18. Children under the age of 18 in China can play 1 hour of online games on Friday, 1 hour on Saturday, and 1 hour on Sunday. And that's all. Now, the authorities observed something. What do you think they might have observed that led them to make that kind of ruling? I prefer talking if it's faster and clearer, but if you want to type, you can.
Children were playing games instead of doing schoolwork.
Okay, that's a definite possibility. Yeah, Chris says bad behavior. Maybe they notice bad behavior. Chris, you said in the message that you prefer to be called Chris, but you have Juju written after there. What do you want me to call you? You're muted.
Whatever you feel is more comfortable.
Okay. Okay. I generally go with whatever's typed at the bottom under your name. So we'll go with Chris. What's Juju? Where'd that come from?
Randomly. I don't know. He just made
Okay,
it up
that's kind of
a couple
fun.
years ago.
Kind of fun. All right. So yeah, bad behavior, school scores. That's a tongue twister. School scores were low. Yeah, those are definitely some possible things that they observed. So let's go with Charlotte's there. Let's go with school scores were low. Oh, one thing I want to point out to you guys are all sending just to me. So see that little blue box at the bottom of the chat box? If you click the down arrow beside that, it says everyone in meeting. Choose that if you want everybody to see what you're sending. Now you can just write to me if you want to, that's fine. I'm very flexible with that, but whatever. But yeah, school scores, let's say they saw dropping grades. So school scores started going down. That would be something that they observed. So what's the next step in the scientific method after observation?
Hypothesis?
There's one in the middle. One
Oh,
before hypothesis. Anybody remember? It is ask a question. So think of question words like why, who, when, what if, those kind of things. What question do you think the Chinese authorities could have asked if what they observed was grades were dropping? What might their question have been?
What can we do to fix this?
Sorry, Abigail, I'm not hearing you.
What could we do to fix this?
What can we do to fix it? Yeah.
how do we raise the children's grades or get them
Yeah.
more dedicated to raising them?
Good. Good. Sometimes we just want to start with the why of something. Why? Why is this happening? And that then leads us to our hypothesis, which is next. All right. What is a hypothesis? What's that word mean? Anybody heard that word before? So a hypothesis is
Sorry, my mom was talking to me. It's an educated guess. Sorry.
okay.
She was
Yeah,
telling me about
that
what
a lot. Educated guess. That's a good way. I don't really love the word guess because there's more science to it than just guessing, but educated guess is a good place to start with a hypothesis. That's a good definition. Now, a really good hypothesis, and the kind that I'm going to teach you guys to write, has two parts to it. It has a statement and then a prediction. So there's the statement at the beginning and then a prediction. And we often will put that hypothesis in if-then format. If is the statement and the then is the prediction. So kind of look at it this way. A hypothesis would be, the statement would be at the beginning, the statement to guide your research. And then the prediction is a guess of the outcome. You don't have to read through all that. Sometimes a good if-then hypothesis is called a conditional statement. It is a statement with the hypothesis followed by a conclusion. The hypothesis is the first part and the conclusion is the second part. Basically, it's if I do this, then this will happen. That's a good hypothesis. If we do this, if this is done, then this will happen. And we have some variables that we talk about. Now, these terms can be confusing. Don't worry if you don't get it right now. We're going to go over this a lot. The if part of the hypothesis tells you what your experiment is going to be. Is called the independent variable, what you're going to change. The then part of the hypothesis tells you what you're predicting is going to happen, or what you're going to measure to see your results. That's called the dependent variable. So there are three kinds of we use the word variable. Basically, it means parts of an experiment. So there are three variables that we work with in science. There are independent variables, dependent variables, and controlled variables. So independent variables, the one you change. Dependent variables are the ones you measure, and controlled variables are the ones you keep the same. Anybody who's had class with me before, do you remember the song? Independent variables are the ones you change. I'm going to play it in just a second here. So we work with these different kinds of variables. Independent variables, what you change. Let's take a look at one. Here's an example. What I'm changing in this experiment here is the amount of water. That is my independent variable. This plant's getting very little. This plant's getting a little more, and this plant's getting a giant amount, a lot of water. So that's my independent variable. It's the thing I'm changing. The dependent variable is the thing I'm going to measure. It's the variable that's affected by the change, like the size of the plant, the number of leaves, is it living or dead? Whatever it is I'm looking for is the dependent variable. So here they are again, all these right here. The independent variable is the thing that you change, and we always try to only change one thing in an experiment. We want it to be a controlled experiment. So we only change one thing at a time. If in this experiment right here, I was changing the size of the pot and the soil that was used and the temperature of the water and the humidity in the air and the amount of sunlight that it got, that's not a controlled experiment because there's too many things that are being changed at once. So the dependent variable is the thing that we're going to measure, the change that happens. Did the plant grow or did it not? And then everything else is a controlled variable. Everything that we want to keep the same, the type of plant, the pot size, the amount of liquid, the type of soil, everything else is going to be a controlled variable. It's the thing that we keep the same. So this is a silly song. I'm going to play it again, in future classes, because I think it's really a good way to remember all this.
Independent variables are the ones you change. Dependent variables are the ones you change. Dependent ones are what you measure. Controls will stay the same, whatever. Independent variables are the ones you change.
Okay, everybody knows what the word control means. When you control something, you keep it in, you keep it the same, you keep it under control. So you know what controlled variables are. They're the ones you don't change. They're the ones you keep the same. Really, all you have to remember is independent variables are the ones you change. Just the first line of that song. If you can remember independent variables are the ones you change, then you remember that the dependent ones are what happens because of the change, what you measure, what your data is going to be based on when you do a kind of an experiment. All right, so putting all that together and looking back at our China study now, the observations that the Chinese government made led them to form a hypothesis. Let's write a hypothesis for this in if-then format. If something is done, then something will happen. Remember, what we chose is that their grades were low. So the grades were low. So they want to do an experiment based on that observation. What would be a good if-then hypothesis for an experiment that they could do? The if is going to tell us what our experiment is. If we do something, then something will happen.
Limit their time on the video game.
Okay, put it in if-then format.
If we limit the time on their video game, then they will get better grades.
Excellent. That's a perfect if-then hypothesis. And the real beauty of an if-then hypothesis is that it tells us what we're going to do in our experiment. The if is the experiment. We're going to limit time on video games. If we limit time on video games, it also tells us what we're going to look for in our data. We're going to look for grades to improve. So let's talk about experiment now. We talked a little bit in the lesson. You were reading about what makes a controlled experiment. A controlled experiment is one where only one variable's changed. And we want to make sure that we, whenever we can, only change one thing. If we change too many things, we don't know what causes the effects that we see. If we only change one thing, we know that that is responsible for the effects. So take a look at this experiment. You do an experiment to determine whether a mung bean plant grows better when watered with 40-degree water or 80-degree water. What is the variable that was changed?
40 degrees to the 80 degrees.
Yep, the temperature of the water is the only thing that we're changing there. That is the independent variable. It is the only thing that we changed. What are some variables that we're not changing in this experiment? Some controlled variables. Type of
Um,
plant. Good.
the amount of sunlight or the place you have the plants in.
Yep, very good. Amount of light, good. Once again, you guys are sending just to me. Make sure that you click to send to everyone if you want to, have if you want the group participation thing, I think is important. The amount of light, basically everything else is going to be controlled. All right, so if the independent variables, the thing we change, that's the temperature of the water. The controlled variables are all the other things. What then is our dependent variable? Remember, dependent one is what you measure. What are we going to be measuring in this experiment? We're going to be measuring the plant, either the size of the plant, whether it's alive or dead, the width of the plant, something about the plant we're going to measure. So this is a controlled experiment because only one thing is being changed. That one thing is the independent variable, the temperature of the water. The dependent variable is the thing we measure, the growth of the plant. The controlled variables are everything else. Yes, please. All right. So variables that are called controls, we're not really interested in them in an experiment. They're not contributing to the experiment at all, but we control them so that they don't influence the outcome. So what that means is in this experiment right here, it doesn't really matter what the amount of sunlight that the plant gets, as long as they both get the same. It doesn't matter what the temperature or what the amount of water is, as long as they both get the same. It doesn't matter what soil they're used, just so they're the same. We want it not to affect the outcome of the experiment, so we control those things. Now, we have one variable that's changed at a time in a controlled experiment. Now, this can get a little bit tricky here because we sometimes call the groups that we experiment on experimental groups and control groups. So just like in a controlled experiment, the controlled variables are kept the same, a control group is also kept the same. It's the one that we don't have any independent variable there. We're not changing anything. We're keeping everything the same in a control group. The experimental group is the one that we experiment on. All right, so after we've done our experiment, now we're going to gather some data. That's the next thing that we do. We're going to gather and then analyze the data. So we analyze the data to tell us, does it support our hypothesis or doesn't it? If it does, great. We can go right into the conclusion and publish our results. If it doesn't, then we have to go back and write a new hypothesis. All right, so this experiment right here, this data table is giving us data of plant growth in soils with different pH values. pH is the amount of acid or base that is in an object, in a substance. So here are the pHs of the soil. Plant groups 1 through 7, pH of 6, the plant grew 25.4 centimeters. pH of 6.6, it grew 53.3 centimeters. pH of 7.2, it grew 22.9 centimeters. Now we're going to evaluate this data. If we did this experiment, we would evaluate the data to see whether it supported our hypothesis and then come to our conclusion. We're going to skip the hypothesis part of this one. What do you think you can conclude based on this data table? Give me a conclusion, something that would be reasonable based on the data table.
pH of 6.4 and 6.8 is the best.
Not 6.4. So these two are the highest right here. So we would say between 6.6 and 6.8 is the optimum pH of soil for plant growth. 6.4 is still better than the other ones.
Yeah, that's the only reason I said it.
Yeah, you're still in the 50s here. So, but you know, we could say low pH and high pH is not good for plant growth. So we could say pH between 6.0 and 6.2 and above 6.8 are not good for plant growth. So we can give our conclusion either way, either what is good or what isn't good. The point is we're evaluating our data. We're taking a look at the data that we have and coming to a conclusion. All right. Now, when we're talking about data, there's a couple different kinds of data. There's data you can measure, and there's data that just sort of talks about the quality of something. So qualitative data deals with characteristics that are not numbers. They're measured in words. So I'm going to look at something in the background. So let's take a look at the plant in the background behind Asia. We're going to pick on your plant, Asia. So there are we can come up with some qualitative data about that plant. Qualitative data doesn't use a number. It just describes the quality of something. So that would be something like the color of the plant, the shine of the leaves of the plant, the amount of bushiness of the plant, the soil that the plant is growing in. There are things that we're not measuring. Quantitative data, though, that's something that we do measure. That's something that is going to give us a number. It is numerical data. So basically, if it is quantitative, it has a quantity. If it's qualitative, it has a quality. So using Asia's plant, the quantitative data would be things like how tall the plant is. We can measure that. How wide the plant is. How many leaves there are. How many stalks there are. How many branches that there are. Those are all things we can measure, and they give us a number in order to be able to evaluate our data. Quantitative gives a quantity, a number. Qualitative gives a quality. All right, so with regard to the China study again now, how will it collect its data? Think about that. Think about how it might be challenging. If you were in charge of this program, you have to collect data now to see if it is meeting the hypothesis or not. What are some challenges there might be?
Kids are getting bad grade based off of them playing the game.
I'm sorry, I only heard the second part of what you said, Chris.
It'd be hard to find how many kids are getting bad grades based off of them playing the game.
Yeah, it would be hard. There's a lot of children in China. So it would be, your sample size is pretty huge. You want a good sample size, you want more than just a couple, but to have, millions of children, that's going to be hard to be able to evaluate. What else? There's a couple other challenges to a study like this. One is what we call compliance, which is, are kids actually doing it? Are they finding ways to be online other times? So are they complying? That's a big one. Whenever we're talking about experiments that have to do with people don't often comply. A lot of times people find ways around things. They find ways around rules. Another one is time. How long, with a study like this one, how long do they have to look at it? before they determine whether or not it worked. Would a month be long enough? Would a year be long enough? Is it going to take a whole generation?
I think a year,
Time-
a long. I think the
Yeah,
years.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have to be a while. Yeah, having to look at all the schools' test grades. Yeah, so that's a lot of work. Somebody's gonna have to be gathering that data, and that's a challenge in and of itself. So it is definitely a challenge. In addition now, China didn't just limit video game time. They also made a couple of other changes at exactly the same time. So one thing that they did is they tried to limit what they call celebrity culture, where students have celebrity heroes. They said, we don't want that anymore. They also banned any online education with foreign teachers. It used to be that teachers from other countries could teach online to children in China. They don't allow that anymore if they're under the age of 18. So is this a controlled experiment that they're running? Think what a controlled experiment is. Is it?
I wouldn't say so.
Why?
Well, I mean, they can't really control it, and they can't really control what people are doing.
So remember, a controlled experiment, the definition of controlled experiment is changing one variable.
Well, that's true. I guess they're only changing one thing.
Well, remember, they're not though.
Oh wait, they're not because of celebrity culture, so it's not
Right.
a controlled experiment. No.
It's not, because they want to eliminate celebrity culture. They banned online teachers from foreign countries. So there are at least, there's more, but there's at least those three things that they changed all at the same time. This is not a controlled experiment. And in the end, they're not going to know what has the effect because it's not a controlled experiment. Now, I will tell you, when you're talking about human beings, it's really hard to have a controlled experiment. It's really hard to change something and only change one variable because people are complicated. We have a lot of variables that affect us. So that's something that we have to look at. All right, let me see here. Anybody have any questions about the scientific method? Like I said, we're going to go over it repeatedly. We will have a couple of little scenarios that we'll do in some classes that'll help us to learn. So when we're talking about science in general, we can put science itself into two different categories. We have pure science, and then we have applied science. So pure science is basically knowledge for the sake of knowledge. When we look out at the stars and we just gather information about what the stars are made of, that's just knowledge for the sake of knowledge. So if pure science is knowledge for knowledge's sake or knowledge discovery, what do you think applied science is?
Maybe science for like a specific reason, like
Yeah.
you need to do this.
Yeah,
required?
it's applying that knowledge to solve a particular problem. So applied science is that branch of science that focuses on using the knowledge. So you can look at them together right here. Pure scientists try to study how and why the world works, where applied scientists try to figure out how they can use it. They try to solve problems to make life better. So studying how electricity works is a good example of pure science. We just want to know how electricity works. Using that electricity to bring lights into a home, that's applied science. We'll cover both pure science and applied science in our course as we go through. So here's a couple of examples. You tell me whether this is pure science or applied science. Creating a new version of the iPhone.
Applied science.
Yeah, that's applied. That's making use of the knowledge for some effect. What about researching a type of bacteria?
Pure.
That's going to be pure. Using that bacteria to make a new medicine.
Applied.
Applied.
Applied, yep. Using genetic engineering to develop a type of corn that will grow in the desert.
Applied.
Applied.
Applied. They're actually working on that now. Yep.
Ooh.
Studying the stars.
Pure.
Pure. Making a new space shuttle.
Applied.
Applied. Looking for a new species of jellyfish.
Pure.
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 Yeah. All right. You guys get the idea here. So there are a lot of different fields within both pure and applied sciences. And of course, there are a lot of different fields within biology. So one of them is a scientist who studies insects. Anybody know what that kind of scientist is called?
Etymology.
Yeah, entomology is the study of studying insects. So an entomologist is going to study insects. What would you be called if you wanted to study about microorganisms? What kind of scientist are you? You are a microbiologist. So micro refers to the microscopic organisms. Bio means life, and ologist is a person who studies. So microbiologist. What about somebody who is going to study about the chemistry of living things?
I think that's a biological chemist.
Yeah, but
Is
we
it
would
correct?
shorten it to biochemist. So biochemistry is the field. A biochemist would be the person. So what about the study of how organisms interact with their environments?
Environmental science?
Close. Yes, it's part of environmental science. We would say ecology.
Uh,
Yeah. What about the study of plants? Study of plants is botany. And the study of animals, of course, is zoology. We'll also talk about genetics. This is a big field in biology right now. So we will spend a good bit of time talking about how you inherit the characteristics that you have, how organisms inherit things from their parents. And we will talk about all of this and more this year. So I'm going to end with what I think is a real cute video just about animals. I think animals are so cool. So this elephant here is watching the guy play the drums. Let me know if you cannot hear the sound. You can almost see the thought process as it stands there mesmerized at the beginning. What are you doing? And then, just like any child, it goes, my turn, pulls that drum toward itself and then starts to play, and then looks at the guy, like, you know, smells the guy with its nose, with its trunk there. Animals are cool. All right. Guys, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for participating. The participation will really make our class better. So I know today was a lot of just listening to me drone on and on. I'll do much less of that in future classes. I had to get the basics out of the way at the beginning here, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. And if there's anything that you would like to learn more about, send it my way. If you have any questions, send them in my way as well. And, you know, see you next Tuesday. Thanks for
Bye.
coming. Bye, everybody.